Hello everyone, today we're going to go ahead and talk about enums. Now, an enum, or an enumeration type, it is a variable value type that uses named constants with underlying numeric types. I'll give you guys an example here. To go ahead and define an enum, I would type the word enum, almost just like I would define a variable or an object, instance of an object, and then I'll give it a name. In this case, we're going to go ahead and call it a season. And then I would go ahead and list some string literals. Not string literals, but much like I'm naming some additional variables. In this case, these are all going to become constants. And as you can see, like any other data type, you define the type, you give it a name. With enums, then you're defining a list of named constants. Okay? These are all contained within the enum. Now, the named constants within an enum each have an underlying numeric value. Okay? By default, they are all ints, or int32 constant variables. You can specify what the underlying numeric data type it could be like this, where I could say I want an enum of seasons and I want the underlying data type to be U shorts. Okay? Or I want it to be int16s. Okay? By default, they are all going to be ints. You can go ahead and mouse over them and see that each one has a value associated with it. So spring was 0, summer is 1, autumn is 2, and winter is 3. Okay? Each successive, by default, the underlying numeric values start at 0, and each successive named constant increments its underlying numeric value by 1. 0, 1, 2, 3. You can specify the value for any of the named constants at any point, though. If I were to go ahead and say that spring equals 5, mouse over spring name equals 5, and summer is 6, autumn is 7, winter is 8. Okay? I'm going to be aware that anytime you specify the value of a constant, each successive named constant within the enum will begin its numeric value plus 1 more than the immediate previous constant. So, to really show that, let me go ahead and set autumn to 23. Now spring will still be 0, summer 1, autumn 23, and then winter 24. So at any point, if you specify the underlying numeric value of one of these constants, each successive constant thereafter will start the counter from the previously explicitly set constant. So this goes 0, 1, 23, 24. You can, of course, go ahead and set them at any mix and match which ones are set, which ones aren't. So I'll get spring 3, summer 4, autumn 23, winter 24. You can specify all of them, and they can also go ahead and be in any order for the underlying numeric value. You don't have to go ahead and have greater values with each successive constant. Okay? This will all be totally valid, and there you'll be able to access these values. Now, when you want to go ahead and access an enum and its values, its named constants, you can do so almost as if it was statically available or an abstract class. Now, to see what I mean here, I can go ahead and write console.writeLine, and I can type in season, and it pops up. Now, it recognizes season as part of the program class as an enum. I didn't have to go ahead and say it was static. I didn't have to define it as an abstract class or something like that. It just, as an enum, it is treated almost like it's statically available. And then I can do season dot, and I could say spring, for instance. Okay. Now, in this example right here, you should know that this is going to print the string spring. By default, enums will convert their named constants into strings when doing something like console.writeLine. And let me show you that here. Spring. Okay. If, however, you want to access the underlying numeric value, you can do so by casting. Let's say cast season.spring to an integer. That'll go ahead and look at season.spring and get its underlying numeric value. Okay? As long as that numeric value can be cast to an int. And it can be, and we have the number 3 right there. You could also go ahead and take this and assign it to a variable, for example. Now, you can also go in the opposite direction. You can take a numeric value, such as an integer, and get back the corresponding enum constant name. So let's go ahead and do console.writeLine again. And I'm going to use season as my casting data type, and I'm going to pass it the value of 23. Okay? 23 matches to autumn. So this should go ahead and print to the screen autumn, right there. If I were to go ahead and give it a value that does not have an underlying correlated named constant, it's just going to print back to me the numeric value because it can't cast 5 to a season. No season has 5 as its underlying value. Now, enums are useful for doing things like creating groups here that all have underlying numeric values. Sometimes you don't even need the underlying values. You want to be able to get spring, summer, autumn, winter. You may ask a user, what do they want to select from a list, and that list may be populated based upon the options in an enum. You may then want to go ahead and use their underlying values to do something, either mathematically, to store the data as just a single number as opposed to storing a string, things like that. You'll see enums used in cases where you want to have these kinds of logically named grouped constants with underlying values that you want accessible throughout your program, but you don't want to list just a bunch of variables or a bunch of constants outright. This gives you a way to group them up and do so in a way where it's very readable, human readable while looking at your code. In game development, you may see enums used for things like setting the game state, whether the game is playing, pause, so on and so forth. We'll get more into using enums as we get into beyond just looking at the individual aspects of code and get into more of the programming application side of code. Thank you very much.